September of 2012, we left our home port of Seattle on a trip around the world in our Nordhavn 52 Dorona. Hello, this is Jennifer and James Hamilton aboard Nordhavn 52 Dorona in Stornoway, Scotland. In our previous video, we removed the defective cylinder head from our generator and ended with the engine in pieces on the floor. In this video, we'll install the new cylinder head and fully reassemble the generator. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's a little slow to clean because I want to minimize the amount of debris I get in any other into the cooling system or the oiling system. It's getting close though. You can see it's just a little bits of gasket here and there, but it's getting...
Oh yeah, it's looking a lot better.
It's looking a lot better. All right, here what we've got is I finally got the head gasket all cleaned up and got out of there.
Oh, it looks beautiful.
It is. I've measured the piston heights above the crown, and I've polished this piston off to get it nice and clean to measure accurately because it's the tallest of the bunch. This is an unusual process that we're using on this engine where you measure the height of the piston above the block deck surface in order to figure out which head gasket to use. You can see the surface of the block deck is nice and clean, looking good. So we've got that cleaned up. The last thing remaining is this piston. We're going to measure the distance between this piston and the deck surface itself to find out which gasket to use. This is a magnetic holder for a dial gauge. If you flip that over, it holds on tightly. These dial gauges are very sensitive, so they need to be treated with a little bit of care.
And what does a dial gauge do exactly?
Measuring distance. So I'm just going to clamp the dial gauge into this magnetic holder that I've got. And what I'm looking for here is just getting it central in the dial gauge's play, and then I want to lock it on there. It's a little too tight, so this is a cam that locks that flexible assembly. What we need to do is just get it just to the point where that cam can lock it good and tight. It's not quite tight enough yet. It's kind of sensitive.
So how does it work? You take a calibration at one point and then move it to a different point?
Right. And what's happening right now is it's just barely shifting, I believe. And so I'm not getting exactly the reliable reading that I need to get. So I'm just going to move it back and forth until I get it reasonably predictable. You can see it's measuring thousandths of an inch, and so as I even touch it, it just twitches slightly. So that's that's exactly zeroed. See, it's just shifted slightly. So I need to keep doing it until I get it so it's not shifting at all. What's difficult is making sure the whole assembly is staying rock solid as I shift it back and forth. 23.5 minus 2, so 24.5. 22. 22 and minus 4. 21 and minus 5. So we're getting just slight shifts, but 25 thou is the difference. Is the difference there, and that's what I'm going to go with. As you can see, each time I do that, if I bump anything, then I lose all of the accuracy. And it's very hard to get this flexible assembly solid enough that it doesn't shift a tiny amount.
It looks really fussy. Yeah.
So the reason why I went back and forth, 10, 12 times on that, is I really want to be very, very certain that we're getting the right number. So then what we're going to do, so we're going to have a look at this, and here's the engine model 843. Here's the measurements in millimeters of the piston above the block deck height, and then which cylinder to use, and which head gasket to use, pardon me. And so you see in our case, I've converted these millimeters to thousandths of an inch, since that's what my gauges read, and the first gasket is for 0.023 to 0.027, and we got roughly 0.025. So we're right dead center in the middle of that lower one. So that's the one we'll go with, which is 1.3 millimeters tightened down.
So is the dial gauge something you bought specifically for this job, or have you got it?
No, I use it for all sorts of things. It's really useful to measure things like runouts of prop shaft, anything where you need to have a precision fit. It's a great choice. So back to I'm going to go choose the head gasket now. Okay, so the T equals 1.3 gasket is what's spec'd.
Okay.
And that I've looked that up, and it's this part number ending in 491. So we'll set this head gasket aside for this job. Next thing I need to do is cleaning this off. It's super important that it be really clean. Unfortunately, it means that there's no way not to get things a bit dirty, and so I'm going to blow out as much as I possibly can.
What are you doing there?
I've taken this out to really give it a good clean. There's rust on it, and the best way to get it to seal up well is to make sure it's no loose paint or anything like that.
That's the heat exchanger?
Yeah, this is the heat exchanger and exhaust manifold combination. You can see it's getting close to clean enough on there. Those threads are getting good. There's the new head.
Okay.
I'm just finishing up the last of the cleanups. One of the biggest parts of this job is getting all the gasket surfaces really nice and clean, because they will not seal, or they may not seal if it's not good and clean.
So what are the three parts you've got there closest to you, starting from closest to you?
Right beside me, the one I'm working on, is the combination heat exchanger and exhaust manifold.
Okay.
And that's the cylinder head.
That's the new one.
Yep, and that's the rocker carrier.
Engine's looking pretty small compared to what it did this morning.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely lost its entire top. It's really the only thing I don't like about this job so far is it's really hard to be clean enough, and it's such a small piece of real estate to be working in. But
yeah, you haven't got a lot of room to put your parts down and
exactly
work around things.
Alrighty, so now I'm going to start reassembling the engine and getting it back to shape. Okay, here's a brand new head gasket of the appropriate size.
So does that glue in, or it just sits in there?
Just sits in there.
Our brand spanking new cylinder head.
Exactly.
Is it hard to get it to fit right?
No. Just need to drop it onto the right place. What I'm getting now is the cylinder head bolts. It's a little bit of engine oil onto the threads.
Does that make it easier to go in or out, or what do you do that for?
Partly it avoids seizing in place. You'll see most of these are slightly oily, but there's a couple that are rusty. Could possibly have corrosion causing one to break off on disassembly.
Oh, that would be challenging to deal with.
That would be a mess.
So if we ever have to take it apart again, hope we don't, but if we do, then that'll make it easier to do it.
It's really just you want it to get proper torque. You want them a little bit of oil on them, and partly because you don't want them seizing up. Those are the three short ones.
I'm just wearing gloves now when you weren't before.
Just while I was cleaning up, especially using some of the heavier chemicals, I was wearing gloves, and I just haven't bothered taking them off yet. So now I'm going to check the torque sequence.
Oh, is that the ones that have to go in a certain order?
They sure do.
So what does the torque sequence look like? Can you turn that around for me?
Sure. It's right on the bottom, right there.
So it gives, oh, I see, so it gives an order.
Exactly.
So they're all numbered, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and those 3 short ones are along the front, 12,
Okay.
10, 12, and 14.
Okay.
And so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Working out from the middle. This is just a little bit more than finger tight. And strictly speaking, there's really no reason to follow the torque order when you're just touching it down, but I shouldn't say there's no reason to. It's probably unnecessary, but I just like to be extra careful. And the torque is 76 foot-pounds.
So where does it say that? Can you turn it around for me?
You can hardly read it.
Why is the order so important for torquing them?
It's seating the gasket and working it out towards the outside rather than having it bunch up is one reason. The other reason is you don't want the cylinder head to actually flex or take on a warp. 76. I'm more touchy than normal on this job, just so I tend to do a little bit at a time. So in fact, on this one, I'm going to turn it down to about 50 foot-pounds.
And what's the reason for that?
I like to do them up steadily and starting at a sub, less torque than required. Do them all in order, then go up to the torque. Do them all in order. What you'll see me do is I'll check it 3 times. Many people don't like doing that, but that's what I've been taught to do, and that's the way I like to do it.
So you do it to 50 and then you'll do it to 75?
Yeah, 76, yeah. It's probably more care than is required, but it's an important job, so why get it wrong?
You barely have clearance there.
Just makes it.
So that click here right at the very end is the torque being correct.
Yeah, that means that it's at that torque.
Yeah.
All right, so that's them all at 50, and there's 76. Yep. Alrighty, so now what I'm going to do, happy with what I've got right there, I'm going to do one more check, which again, people don't like always doing this, but I don't want to run the slightest chance that we haven't checked the torque and we missed something. What we're looking for here is nothing is moving at all, which is exactly what you want for the check run. That is a torque cylinder head.
Wow, that's great. So there's our new cylinder head in
Exactly.
place.
That's it, ready to go.
Still a ways to go before that engine is running again, but we're off to a good start.
Yeah, long way to go yet, but it's coming along quickly. This is attached to the fuel filter bracket onto the block and the cylinder head. Okay. And of course the reason it's off is because it was attached to the cylinder head. Now at this point, I think we're ready to go with that heat exchanger. It's a slight bit heavy, so I'm going to be a little careful with it.
How much does it weigh, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. No, probably not more than about 15 or 20 pounds. Just checking the clearances and everything right now before I drop it into place. This is the gasket for the exhaust manifold, and heat exchanger assembly. And the challenge on this one will be keeping that gasket in place.
Can you use a bit of blue tape or something to hold it in place?
You could use a little bit of a gasket sealant, although this doesn't really need it.
Oh, looks like it might work.
Yeah. These are quite short cap screws, so not a lot to hold it in place. It's sort of a mess because the very little of those bolts stick through, and so if they slip back even slightly at all, it's not going to go in.
The gasket looks well positioned.
Yeah, the gasket's in there, right? It's only held on by a couple threads. Now we just need to jiggle it until we find those threads. That's that one. Okay, so that's held on by those. The thermostat goes into there, so I'm going to attach this.
Onto that opening on the right there?
No, right inside there.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so they're all kind of finger tight right now.
Okay. Do those need to be torqued as well?
It's funny, you know, I don't have torque specs for that particular one, which I thought was odd, but they didn't supply it, or I couldn't find it, so no, I don't. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snug these up nice and easy right now, and then I'm going to put the thermostat in. And the reason the thermostat's a little bit of I shouldn't say a challenge, but it's held, the plate's held on out by a big spring, so I'd like to have this centered up properly first. Yeah, here's that big spring.
Oh, that is a big spring.
It is definitely a big spring. I use Loctite on these four, just to make sure we don't get water in anywhere. So I'm gonna have to go get a little bit of Loctite.
What kind do you want? Blue, red?
Blue,
okay.
Loctite blue.
I'll go grab that. What's the difference between blue and red and various other kinds?
Blue is designed to be able to come out easier than red.
Let's see.
So it's being used in this case more or less as a sealant rather than as a prevention from loosening.
Spring looks like it's pushed back a bit.
Yeah, I need to get a mirror and just make sure I mean, I'm positive it's right, but I just want to get a mirror and make sure that thermostat is seated correctly. Yeah, it is.
Great.
Just being a little bit on the careful side on that one, or I guess on all of them. Got that roughly situated the way I like. So now what I'm going to do is put the gasket on there. Keeping it spring centered in the meantime.
That looks a little tricky.
The only tricky part with this is getting those first few threads to grab. All right. I've popped this off again because I just couldn't get the thermostat side to catch, and the threads wouldn't catch, and I just don't want to damage the gasket or have any other problems. So I've just, and sometimes the best thing you can do is just check it.
So back it goes.
Back it goes. I find it a little difficult to work with it because there's nothing to hook it onto.
Yeah, you gotta just kind of hold it up.
Yeah. I'm being a little bit more cautious that I'm definitely catching threads before I pull that up, so to avoid that problem repeating. I can feel that thread's not catching again, so I've got to be very careful here. So what I'm doing is I'm getting all the threads started, and even though these two are going to have to come back out, I'm just making sure that they're in correctly.
Got your thermostat going in?
Yeah. Now I'll take those ones back out, make sure that they're definitely going to catch on each one of those.
Not looking okay?
So yeah, it is.
Great.
It's looking great.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think what's going on is the head has fresh paint on it, and so it's probably getting in my way a little bit. Yeah, that's definitely going in.
Great.
Just going to reapply a little bit of Loctite on those ends.
But I can't imagine how you could do that job if that light was still there. I mean, you're just already using up all the space.
It is a little tight up there, so I think I would have trouble with this job without that light being removed.
Yeah. Are those catching?
Two of them have.
Okay.
I don't know that I needed to take that back off, but it's one of those things where if there's a problem, the last thing you want to do is have a thread turned and damaged in the head, a brand new head, or anything like that. So,
or damage the gasket.
Yeah, I've only got the one gasket. Yeah, very good point. So these are now going in. They're all catching. They're all fine.
Excellent. That's great.
So a bit of a setback there, but it's now coming back. I'm going to do one more search through that manual just to make sure there's not torque specs for that, because there's torque specs for everything else I need. I'm just surprised there's not torque specs for that one.
Okay.
So I'm going to sit down, take a break, have a drink of water, and check.
Okay.
I did not find a torque spec on that, so I will just use my judgment on the intake, on the exhaust manifold.
It's a little surprising. What?
Yeah, the reason I looked twice is I sort of can't believe that it's not there, but it doesn't seem to be. Okay, now the bypass hose has to go up on there.
Oh yeah, that's underneath there, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're just tightening up the clamp now?
Yeah.
Okay. You said that's the bypass hose?
Yes. The thermostat opens up, flows water through this hose.
Oh, right. When it decides to not let all the water through, it'll bypass it through there. Can you actually see what you're doing? You're just doing it by feel?
Just by feel, unfortunately. And what I should do is, I'm tempted to let me just get in there and get a view.
Or at least you can see what you're doing there.
Yeah. It's a little easier. Good stuff. That's done.
So what's next?
I'm going to put on some of the electrical sensor components. The next one is the exhaust elbow is going to go on. And what I'm going to do, what I usually do, is get this thing, this end cap, and make sure it's all sitting in there right first.
What happens if it's not? Otherwise you just can't get the elbow on properly?
Well, it's sort of a little bit of a dance to get the elbow in there. And so I like to get it in there first before hooking it on. That's where I want everything right there.
It's sitting there properly.
Yeah. Screwing in 3 of the cap screws. And there's a nut on a stud for the last one. There's the exhaust hose on there as well, so everything's pretty much where it needs to be on this assembly.
Oh, that's good, so it's coming together nicely.
Yeah. Finding it a bit hot in here.
No, it's not too bad. I think you're actually working. I'm just holding the camera. So. My job's a little easier.
Yeah, there's not much heavy in this job, but it's a lot of stuff.
A lot of motion, a lot of some effort to do things up and wrestle with things. There's a good shot for our new starter. Earlier video we showed how we diagnosed and installed that recently. So is that all the exhaust system put back together now?
Not quite. Needs to have these hose clamps done up.
Seems like a lot of being mechanic is taking stuff apart and putting it back together again. Loosening things and tightening things back up.
Yeah, that's pretty much all there is. I guess the hard part is figuring out what to do.
I guess you have to go from it's broke to replace or fix the right part.
Well, there's no question on this one that we got the right part.
True.
That valve seat was looking very bad. So I'm going to wait until I put the other one on here.
Yeah, that guy here, yeah.
Because it needs to essentially float in the center of that.
The bundle needs to float?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's the thing. Oh, I see, that's the bundle there. Okay.
Yeah.
And what does that do?
It's cool. It's what cools the engine. So the coolant flows through on the outside of it, and then seawater flows through inside of it and cools down the engine coolant.
I see. Is it a bunch of little rods like that, or is it that's just a grill in the front?
No, that's what runs all the way to the end. Tubes.
Tubes,
little
I guess.
Tubes
yeah,
all the way to the end.
Is that solid cylinder head?
Yeah, that's it.
And what are you doing?
Well, what I'm hoping to do is double nut this to lock it and see if I can't get them out of there. Yeah.
Ah, good.
Because they don't come with a new cylinder head.
Oh, those big bolts?
Yeah.
That looks like you're getting them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So what I'm doing is I'm running 2 of those nuts on and then tightening them against each other. Mm-hmm. Quite tight. And then taking the lower one.
I see.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not working because it's really in that head tightly. So
you gotta make that even tighter.
Yeah. There we go.
Oh, great. That box that the parts came in makes a nice workbench.
It does. Paint makes it hard to get a hold on that.
Oh yeah. And what's that? Just as a support bracket?
It's actually just a bracket to lift the engine in and out, but I'll keep it there just because it was convenient to have.
Hopefully we will never need it.
Yeah.
Collections of scavenged parts.
Yeah. I'm just making sure there's no other parts on here that we need. Looks like there's none.
Well, that cylinder head served us well for like 6,700 hours, but it's time for it to go to the cylinder head heaven in the sky.
Yeah, well, we're not sure it's going to get a free entrance to heaven.
It might not get in.
Might not get in. I would rather it was still running.
Well, the parts pile is getting smaller and the engine is getting bigger.
Yeah.
So is the bolts you just took off the old cylinder head?
Right. A little bit of Loctite, dropping them in there. I'll use the same trick to tighten them in there, where I'll double nut them, where each nut fights against the other one.
Is that an old mechanics trick?
It's the only way you'll get a stud in there. So that's that one done. Yeah, it's 20 to 4. I better pick up the pace here.
The boss is going to want his engine running.
Guy's impossible to work for.
Another gasket.
Yeah, this one is a seal.
Are those two the same that you've got there? Or?
No, one's the valve cover and one is the rocker carrier. So the more complex one is the rocker carrier.
So it goes on either side of that.
What? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was it very hard to get the old one out of there?
No, it just fell off.
Okay, so it wasn't like the gasket for the other, for the
The
cylinder
basket
head.
for the cylinder head was, they always are very glued on there. What I like to do is to get a little oil on these.
That just prolongs its life or makes it easier to go in?
Keeps it from getting damaged on the way in. Just fits into that groove.
Well, it's a complex little seal.
See, the oil just helps it sit in there properly.
Yeah, because it takes a little bit of friction away.
The oil also helps it move around because you can get too much to one side or another.
So you can kind of adjust it a little bit too. Yeah.
Helps move it around.
Making sure you have a nice clean surface.
Yeah, clean is super important. All it takes is a little bit of debris to cause an oil leak.
Yeah. We already have one, so we don't need another.
Definitely don't need any more. Okay, so I'm going to go get, I'll be grabbing the push rods and a few other parts here.
Those are the push rods from the diagram that we were looking at.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I'm putting these back in the same order.
Oh yeah, you mentioned you had them all lined up carefully.
Exactly. Making sure those are in there properly.
So they just sit in there.
They're just sitting on top of the lifters. These little buttons are easy to screw up or not. I guess you could easily forget them. They just...
Little buttons? Oh, you mean
I'll show you.
are those the valve springs?
No, those are the valve springs.
Okay.
These are just little friction surfaces that run above them.
Yeah.
I'm putting oil underneath them so that they don't start up dry. And I'll also put oil on top of them.
And what's the purpose of the little buttons?
It's a wear surface. It's a little bigger than the top of the valve for the rocker arm to push against. Need to be very careful with these because the engine's open and they could fall in. If they fall in, then the engine's coming out.
Oh man.
So be careful getting anywhere near there. Okay, so those are all on there. That's all them ready to go.
Well, it's coming together.
It is. just going to look underneath it to make sure the O-ring is exactly where I want it, and it is. Then I'll put all the rocker arms forward so they're out of the way.
So you can actually see them through there?
Yeah, these are the rocker arms up top here. And I'm backing off the adjustments a long way so I can get good clearance and drop them down properly onto the push rods.
Is that all the way in place yet, or not quite?
No, it's sitting a little high. It's these studs are holding it up, so it's now down there. And again, I'm going to check that O-ring to make sure I'm happy with it. I am.
That's the seal that you just installed?
Yes. Then with these, the push rods are not in place, so I need to move them around.
And so you're moving the rocker arms? Is that where to...
Moving the push rods so that they engage properly with the rocker arm. This has got to be just right.
And what? How do you tell if it's right or not? What do you see?
I'm going to make sure that the push rod's properly engaged.
Let's see. And how do you tell if it's properly engaged? What does it look like?
It's shaped like a funnel on the top, and I'm just making sure that it's in there.
It just has to fit in properly.
Yeah. See, there's one that's not. And I can feel it going in there.
Okay.
There's another one that's not in right. And before I get all those in there, I need to just tighten that down so it doesn't. I notice it's lifting up slightly.
What's lifting? The whole assembly?
The rocker assembly, yeah. Just gotta tighten that down.
So what's up next?
We're gonna torque down the rocker carrier 28.8.
So what are you doing now?
Just making sure that the valves are all where they're supposed to be. This one is not. So I want the push rods in there just right. There we go. So what I'm doing, just guiding the rocker arms underneath there, which I did earlier, but I hadn't tightened this down yet, so a couple of them came off. Okay, so where everything is right now, I'm just going to check it one more time to make sure all the push rods and everything's where it's supposed to be. And it is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the valves. First, a primitive adjustment where these ones that are way too far open, these three, the reason they're they're higher than the others is I've got everything adjusted so the valves are just barely snug, and these ones are supposed to be open. So this one and these two are supposed to be open. So what I'm going to do is adjust them to being roughly the same height as the rest, which will open the valves, and then from that point I can do a normal valve adjustment.
And why do you need to get them to that point in order to do normal valve adjustment? Like
you don't really. It just makes it easier to find where top dead center is on compression. It's because I do that usually by finding out which valves are opening. Good enough. So now what it needs is a valve adjustment. I'm going to quickly survey the job just to think if there's anything else I need to do before adjusting those valves. I think I'll probably put that coolant cap on there.
Okay.
And I will also put the put that oil line on there as well.
Those are your glow plugs?
Glow plugs.
Okay, so those are going back in?
They're going back in. foot-pounds.
So that's torque for the glow plugs?
Yeah.
Engine's starting to look more and more like its old self again.
Yeah, getting closer. They're not going in very tight. Now I'm going to go for the injectors.
Okay, so we're going to put new ones in.
Yep.
That's your injectors, or one of them?
That's one injector, and it's got a gasket on the bottom. It's not a gasket, a copper washer on the bottom. I'm checking to make sure it's super clean. It's not. See in there?
Oh, no.
There's a little bit of paint, so you don't want to put that in there.
Can you show me again?
Right there.
I'm probably in your way, but yeah, I think I can see it. We'll see.
I'm getting that one under there first. There's it. See it?
Oh, right on the end of this. Yeah.
Yeah, I took it out with a little saliva.
Good, you caught that.
Because there's a couple little pieces in there, I'm gonna stop for a second and blow a little compressed air in there just to make sure there's nothing. So I'm just taking the O-ring off the old ones to make sure that they're identical, and they are.
Copper O-ring.
Yeah, little copper washer.
Did those come with the injectors, or were there new parts that you ordered?
Surprisingly, they're separate part. Another new injector.
And those are ones we had as spares already, right? So we didn't need to get those with the cylinder head, right?
Correct. Just trying to guide it in nice and straight.
2 out of 3?
Yep.
It's a stubby little thing. Concerns?
Nope, just thought I saw something on the end of it. It's fine.
Yeah, it almost looked like there was a bit of like a metal shaving or something.
Yeah, it did look like that, but there was not. 51 foot-pounds.
Oh, that's a lot more than the...
Yeah, a lot more. Taking those caps off to clear, but I will put them right back on again as soon as I've got this tightened up.
It just protects them?
Keeps dirt out of them.
Double checking the amount?
That didn't feel right. Yeah, 51.
What did you have it set to?
41.
Oh, so it felt like it wasn't tight enough?
Yeah.
I guess that must be the voice of experience to know the difference between 41 and 51.
Well, I hope I would have checked it anyway. I think I probably would have.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Maybe the right answer is just put that fuel system, put it away.
All the fuel lines
yeah,
back.
just button it up so it's not going to cause any trouble.
You want to put those covers back on your injectors first?
I'm thinking of actually just putting the fuel lines on.
Oh, I see. So that does the same thing.
It does it even better.
So that looks like the return line?
That's the return. If I just covered up, well, all that dirt's flying around. Okay, I'm going to put that oil line on.
Should you put any Loctite on that oil line?
Nope.
And what's that one? That's part of the fuel?
Return fuel line. Nice.
Oh.
Of course, if you take the line over, down, it will leak. And this is 30 foot-pounds. I don't believe it's 22 to 30. I'm looking it up. 22.1.
Oh, good thing you looked it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I did look it up before. I must have just got it wrong. Tightening up the return line. The oil line. And I guess I was about to put this on, but I really should get the fuel system done up.
Mm-hmm. It's looking more and more like an engine again. Do those run at very high pressure?
Yeah, not nearly as high as the Deer. That's over 18,000 psi. Runs this. I've seen it 18,000 when I put meters on it.
Wow.
But it actually goes well over 20,000. So yeah, it gets high. I don't know how high this is, but nowhere close to that.
Yeah.
Still high enough that you need to be careful around it. I won't do these up tight until I've got the lines done themselves. I like to do the fuel lines first, so there's nothing possible holding them apart. I want them done up tight as a number one goal.
Wow. Ready for another inspection?
Is he coming down?
He's thinking about it. He's stuff in his way, but he's thinking about it. Oh, look, you're getting those pretty tight.
No, they're only going to 18 foot-pounds, so I'm holding the wrench short of the whole end just so I can't get it too tight.
I see. Will you put a torque wrench on those too?
I haven't got the. You need a crowfoot to go onto that, and I don't think I have the appropriate size crowfoot. So they're getting an estimate.
And what's that there?
Oil pressure sender.
Oh, you've replaced that a couple of times, haven't you?
The ones that's the oil pressure switch. This is the oil pressure sender. So this sends pressure. This is off on.
Okay.
And so you're right. It was strictly speaking.
Oh, checking to see how it works on the wing.
Yeah,
just sits on the wing.
Just making sure it's sitting the same way. And this is the glow plug electrical connection.
Oh, so that attaches up to each glow plug.
Yes. And there's a wire on the other end of it. And that's the connection back on there. So I'm just surveying right now what needs to be done. I'm thinking it's 5:30 right now.
Yeah.
And the engine is all it needs right now is a valve adjustment. It needs a valve adjustment, and then the air filter and the front of the engine done up. And so none of that can be done until the valve adjustment's done. I'm thinking of putting the valve adjustment off till tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I think that's a fine idea. It's already been a big day.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get it done in one day, but it's less than an hour from being complete at this point.
Yeah, all of the presumably daunting stuff, I guess, is done. I mean, it's most of the stuff that you've done before, so.
Yep, exactly right. I'm just gonna button up the cooling system. Typical just one more thing.
So what do you need to do there? You just tighten things up and get that out of
No, what I need to do is this piece floats in the middle.
Oops. Hose clamp.
Thanks. This piece floats in the middle, and so it's really quite easy to get it wrong.
Oh, that's the heat exchanger bundle.
It is the heat exchanger bundle. And it's a nice little design. It doesn't require zincs because it floats free in rubber support on either end.
Mm-hmm.
But these end caps can be, I don't know, occasionally I have trouble getting them to seal off, not to seal off, but I have trouble grabbing on to the floating bundle.
Oh, I see. So the bundle sticks out at either end and the end caps go on.
Right, and so you need to make sure that you've got the appropriate amount sticking out on either end.
Yeah, I can see that would be a little fussy.
It's not that bad. It's basically a good design, but I think I end up worrying about it a little bit.
Happy where that's positioned?
This is the one that's interesting. It's got to make sure this one does up nicely. I think it will. Yeah, it's doing it properly.
Oh, great.
I think what happens is if the bellows get old, they get a little stiff, and it's easy to slip off at that point.
And we replaced that one recently.
Yeah, that's why. I think that's why this one. I'm finding this one going on just instantly. Is I've probably been putting up with one that's a little hardened up and not right. So now the cooling system's all buttoned up.
Oh, great.
All the sensors and everything are all back on. So now it really is just a valve adjustment, fill up the cooling system, and we're off. So
that's pretty good for a day's work, I think.
Yeah, not bad. I'm fairly happy with it.
Yeah.
Of course, I'll be a lot happier when I see it running and running well, but I'm pretty optimistic. It's looking good.
Yeah, it's gone pretty well so far.
Okay.
The job is close to complete. In the next video, we need to adjust the valves, bleed the fuel system, and then investigate whether anything in this installation could be improved to give greater longevity in the future. You can read more about our trip around the world at mvderona.com, including an interactive map showing our track with a live update of our current location.